Welcome to some more of the Abridged Cherokee campaign. Last time we attacked and defeated an Iroquois army that looked like it was going to invade our territory, and then we did the same thing to Spain, who were failing to invade Florida. They almost did it but gave up and got defeated in the end as a result. Then we went on the offensive against the Iroquois some more and fought two big decisive battles, both victories, the result of which was that we took one of their key territories and we've almost defeated them entirely. But then Spain came back for another go at Florida, this time bothering to attack, and unfortunately they now have it. The capturing army didn't hang around, it immediately moved out to attack the reinforcements I had on the way to try and garrison the fort there. And this is a battle where we don't need to fight. I just took the opportunity to compare the stats of the units on both sides, and vaguely speaking, the enemy's line infantry have good defense and bad attack, and we have good attack and bad defense, and they sort of cancel each other out, although I think having high attack is more important in the way that melee is calculated, so we are a little bit better than them in melees. Anyway, so we just disengaged from that and the enemy went back to their fort. We are still going to have a battle though, because the Iroquois in their turn came to attack the army that I was marching towards their final settlement. We don't have them under siege yet, they're just putting together something to attack us. Strangely, that army just to the right there isn't reinforcing in this battle, which I think is quite unfair for the enemy, but there you go. I noticed something unusual about the replay straight away. The enemy were moving strangely, and I thought it had gone differently to how I remembered it, and indeed, here's the actual footage of the battle. It seems to be on a different map, or at least there's a settlement on the map and many more trees, and that makes my strategy work a lot more and means that we're going to have to use this footage instead of the replay, because the replay footage just didn't work at all. My vague plan was to run at the enemy when they got close to my hidden units, and that's what I'm doing right here, but the enemy have their army very spread out because my cavalry are wandering around and threatening them. So that just means we're going to be able to outnumber locally the units we're attacking first and foremost. My cav will just wander off even more to draw the enemy away, and now in comes a rear attack from around the settlement to just seal the deal on these two units here. We'll destroy them in isolation, one of them being a musket unit, so it's nice to kill those guys in melee very quickly, and away they go. The enemy's still wandering around chasing my cav for the most part, and I'm just going to send the cav right around the edge of the map so that this keeps happening. We'll just want to isolate more enemy units if we can, since this is the easiest way to fight. If the enemy's feeling kitey, we will kite them as much as possible. Eventually got this one unit on its own here, and just going to send the whole army to engage that effectively. We'll send some cav over to help as well, while the enemy's units still remain fixated on these lancers who just aren't doing anything, but they're effectively defeating these units in combat by allowing them to be unsupported. The unit we were fighting right there actually had the enemy commander in it, so that's good news. Down he goes. Now just 4 enemy units left. We've got them quite outnumbered. I'm going to finally use my lancers to actually attack an enemy unit, because one of them got kited out really far away, so we can just lance them through and defeat those guys. The rest of the army seems to be regrouping in front of my formation, so that's very nice of them. That'll make the rest of the fight easy. We've got the numbers to surround them, although that said, I did a pretty bad job of actually surrounding them, because a couple of the enemy units started skirmishing around the place as we attempted to join battle, so things got pretty messy pretty fast. But we have the morale advantage. We can easily make a couple of flank attacks, and the enemy commander's dead. So we don't really need to do anything too fancy here. The enemy units will just rout after a tiny bit of fighting, and there we go. We end up just destroying them, and that'll be the end of that. Another nice heroic victory. I think Empire is super generous with deciding what's a heroic victory. You seem to get it all the time, but anyway. The main point to take away is that the enemy army was destroyed. So that's the Iroquois' field army gone. They really don't have much left. We will still have to fight them again because they have a garrison in their capital, but they're on the verge of destruction now. The problem we have down here in Florida is that the Spanish can, if they want, just move to the north and take Savannah from us as well. We've only got a 1 or 2 unit garrison there, and our units nearby won't be able to reach it this turn, so bit of a problem overall. We need to use these units to somehow retake Florida, and the only real way to do that is going to be to get at least a couple more units into the army, and there is actually a sneaky method to achieve this. We can use the recruit general feature to spend a bit of money and throw an additional general into the army, and it just spawns like that. So now the army's a bit bigger, is going to have a better chance, although this turn there's not much it can do. So we lay siege to the final Iroquois settlement. They've got a substantial garrison and a couple of units outside, so the balance bar is even in their favour there. Fortunately, I realised I could bring all these units from the west over. They don't need to be there for public order reasons anymore, so we'll reinforce our position and make things look a little bit better. Still, it didn't give us an advantage on the balance bar or anything, so no easy auto resolve. Looks like there will be a showdown at some point to decide the fate of the Iroquois. I've also now got a ship down in South America. This is pretty handy because we can capture trade nodes, and for some reason no one else was using them at the moment. So that means we can get some extra money using this ship, which I really didn't expect, so that's very good. And right now our trade port is actually unblockaded because New Spain got bored of blockading it a while ago. So we can make loads of money this turn, and we'll continue to make absolutely loads of money until the enemy decide to block our trade, which they can do at any time. Now the Spanish do go and attack Savannah, so that's unfortunate. There's not too much we can do here. I thought maybe I would fight this to damage the enemy army, but the size of our force is too low. They would probably just rout once the enemy started shooting at them, so I thought let's just auto-resolve. Got a few kills with that, so that's something. But the territory is lost. We'll have to counterattack with the force we're gathering just outside if we can. It's still a bit small though, but thanks to all of that trade income, we've got quite a lot of money this turn, so we are going to be able to remedy that. The enemy also spawns additional garrison units already, so it seems the tribe has instantly converted to European culture, even willing to fight for them right now. Very, very treacherous, but still we will punish them for these crimes. We are going to spam new generals, allowing us to recruit cavalry units effectively without having any ability to recruit otherwise, and I've got enough money to throw loads of them in here, so now our army is going to be much better suited to facing that enemy force, or at least it's going to be similar in size, not very balanced in terms of composition there. The Spanish do sally during their turn, so we're going to test this out right away. We've got 2 actual units and tons of generals, but the general's bodyguard is a pretty substantial cavalry unit, so looks like it's time for a nice fun micro-heavy battle to try and take down all of these infantry. The first thing we'll need to do is, as usual, run away. Since the enemy have mortars, just need to sneak out of their range. I'm also going to hide 2 units of warriors, or the only 2 units of warriors I have, I should say, in a little forest. The plan being to draw the enemy towards my cav, who they can see, so that those 2 units can stage an ambush. And as it happened, 1 unit of enemy line infantry came on its own into the forest, so that's pretty much perfect, the easiest possible ambush. So we're just going to run at them. They of course saw us, and because we're running at them from the front, they did get a volley off, and our guys went down to wavering morale for a second. It was a bit dodgy, but we did get the impact on the front of that unit in the end. Now they'll just have to fight it out while the other unit sneaks around behind to complete the encirclement. And because this enemy unit is on its own, there aren't other units nearby that can support. So really this was an ideal scenario the battle gave us here. So there goes the attack. We just need to watch the rest of the enemy army and see if any of them support. They weren't really too bothered. A couple of them started rotating to look at us, but the fight was over before they could really do anything. Although they were, as we saw there, actually firing their mortars into this melee and killing both sides, so that was nice of them. We rout that unit and start running away. The plan was to just go back into a hidden position and potentially just do the exact same thing again, because some of the other units were now walking towards the forest. Unfortunately, this time things didn't go quite so well. They spotted us and I started running towards them, but the mortars were immediately firing at us somehow, even though we were hidden up until that point. I think they kind of knew we were here since the enemy walked right at us. And anyway, the gunfire caused one of my units to rout. So I decided to call off the attack, and the other unrouted unit will run away with them. A few nice floating corpses there. So we'll just run away, and by running my unit alongside the routing unit, it should make it come back from routing faster because one of its flanks are covered, although I don't know if the way it calculated where the flanks are covered was that complicated in Empire. In later games that sort of thing does work. Anyway, with that sorted, I had cavalry wandering around the edge of the map who managed to find the enemy's mortars, who are now way behind their army, so we can easily take these guys out with no threat at all of the enemy actually doing anything in return to us over here. Their commander there didn't actually spot us coming in because he was looking the wrong direction with his telescope. He just didn't know where this battle was taking place at all. A shame. He's going to go down now. The next move was to attack with 2 units of cavalry towards the enemy's mob unit on their far left, because I thought we can probably just run right through them and destroy the unit instantly and take it out of play before it starts shooting at anything. These 2 units do prove to be enough to do the business. The enemy take enough losses straight away to rout after a short melee. They rout into our men, so they'll take enormous losses, and that'll be the end of them. The unit next door is starting to react, kind of shooting at us, but they haven't rotated, so they can't do it properly. I'm just going to quickly ride over and get them into the melee as well, thinking we might as well try and kill some of these guys while they're kind of isolated. There is this one unit up here that's firing at us, but it also can't really see us because of its exact position on the hillside, so I don't think they were doing too much up there. Meanwhile, the rest of their force was starting to come back towards those melees, so now I can approach it from all sides with my other stuff around the edge of the map, including those infantry who can now get back into the action, this time taking a volley from the front and not routing and just charging right into some enemy infantry. I think with the mortars not firing, our morale's a bit higher now. We're also drawing enemy units away back where our cav initially engaged, just to keep them out of the fight, while more cav come in from other directions to make other attacks. This enemy unit couldn't rotate in time and just gets charged straight away before it can fire. The unit behind it here will have more luck because I did a nice long charge towards it through the woods. It did get a volley off on us, but it wasn't enough to stop its demise. It gets attacked from both sides, and they're going to go down pretty fast over there. Our cav who were kiting the enemy away just came back, because now I can just charge 3 units of cav into 1 unit of infantry. We don't really need to do any tactics there, we'll just kill them with superior numbers and superior quality, because the general's bodyguards are pretty good as melee combatants. Everything routed, and that brought the battle to an end, so things went to plan. Looks like the Spanish army is mostly destroyed now. There are still a few troops, so the siege will continue, but before we look back at that siege, we've got another battle, because right after that, the Iroquois we had besieged up north decided to sally. This battle looks like the balance bar should be in our favour, considering how much stuff we have there on the left, but apparently not. We're going to have to face them on the field. This battle confused me a bit, because I actually fought it a couple of weeks after it was initiated on the campaign map, and I thought I remembered that I was the defender, so I immediately started running up the hill, and of course I was actually correct in thinking that. But the enemy army didn't seem to think that. They just didn't attack me, so I eventually came back down from the hill. You can see they're just standing there. So I thought maybe I was the attacker and I just remembered this battle wrong. So anyway, I started advancing towards them. I could, in theory, have sat in the corner of the map and waited the timer down, and I would have won if I was the defender. But I didn't think I was the defender, so I'm just going to go for the attack, and even if I did want to do that, that wouldn't be particularly entertaining. So as for our plan, we're just going to attack from the front and back at the same time, nothing too special. Here on our right flank, charging some guys forwards because the enemy's archers were exposed. A couple of them decided to stay behind to see what the charge would look like as the rest skirmish away, and we'll just pursue them as they go. The rest of the fight going to be a nice, messy blob, as both sides aren't really engaging in any sort of symmetrical way. I sent 2 units in and they kited pretty much everything onto them, so now they're being flank attacked. I can start setting up on their flanks to make attacks of my own. My cav going around behind the enemy. There are some archers back there on their own to attack later on, and now we'll start committing more of our infantry into the blob, getting that flank attack there that I wanted. The enemy start running away as I hit them there, which is going to further mess mess up the shape of that blob, but we do have more stuff in the area, so even without doing anything particularly special, we should win in the end. Our lancers destroy the archers who they eventually find, and their morale just breaks right away. That's going to free up more units for us to surround and attack the enemy. Really, we have them at this point. We just need to hit the main blob with some rear attacks. In comes some infantry to start that off. Wasn't quite enough to rout them. Would have been better to do it with the lancers, but I'm very conscious of the friendly fire effect that cavalry have at the moment, so I'm just having the cav hang around, although that said, this general's bodyguard did charge into the flank of the blob, because I thought I was mostly hitting the enemy with that particular charge angle, but because both sides do look exactly the same, you really can't tell at a glance. You just have to go for it. Anyway, it does cause everything to rout, so that's going to be the battle won, although there was then a pretty extended additional phase. It started off with this enemy general who was sitting behind the lines the whole time, and for whatever reason I couldn't target him. My men just wouldn't take an attack order to go after him. All I could do was walk into him and then trigger melees as the unit entities start fighting automatically. So that wasn't terribly efficient since our men weren't fighting properly, it seemed. We lost loads of cav in the first unit to find them. I eventually had to just put the entire army on top of that enemy general on the map so that they would be fighting him and eventually bring him down. The unit, as well as being untargetable, was unroutable. That means it's effectively fighting to the death here, and will take far more losses than we deserve to bring these guys down. Very annoying, but really nothing else we can do other than, of course, still wait the timer down, because I actually am the defender, but I wasn't paying attention to that. Now, I found the reason why it was behaving so strangely. There's one member of their unit standing here on the red line, or near the red line, and I think that he's just got frozen in time or whatever, and that's broken his unit. So we need to go over and take that guy out, so that technically the unit will be defeated and the battle can then be won. Eventually, after janking the unit around, I managed to get him into a melee. He routs once the melee starts, but he was also apparently blocking these medicine men from joining the fight, so now I need to get out of the way as they come onto the battlefield. And we're actually going to have the exact same problem with these guys. Most of the unit just rushes forwards on its own. Reinforcements by default run to the center of the map, so I could use that to just have them run right through most of my army and force a melee against them. But again, they will be fighting to the death, so that will be a pretty unfavourable fight in terms of the result in the end. We'll lose far more than we need to, and once again, it was just because a couple of guys decided to stay over here. There's a bit of impassable terrain that seems to be trapping the enemy here, and also made it very hard for me to actually force them into a melee because my guys wouldn't go near enough to the enemy. Eventually, forming this gigantic single file line proved to be enough. I could get one guy close enough to the enemy to start fighting, and that kind of reactivated them. They routed, and finally that's going to bring the battle to an end. So that was a bit harder than we expected, but that is the Empire Total War way. I suppose taking extra casualties doesn't matter too much in this particular circumstance, because now the Iroquois are gone as a faction. That was the last fight we'll need to do, and we even take their capital right away. So that's the end of that for now, although you can see there's actually a French army just standing there. It looks like it just got landed recently. I do, for some reason that I don't understand, have military access with the French. I must have started the game with it for whatever reason, so they are allowed to be here. Still strange, and attacking the French is actually a viable next part of our strategy, since our army's up here and they've got a few regions for the taking. First, though, we're going to deal with more short-term concerns. It's going to be a long time before our army up there can move out due to public order, so we are going to be hanging around for a while. And while that is sorted out, we'll start kicking the Spanish back out of Florida and Georgia. First, Georgia goes down with an easy auto-resolve, gaining us the delicious extra 0 in income. This province has nothing in it, so it's just worth absolutely nothing. It's pretty impressive how bad it is, but at least we can go back to Florida, which is worth something. And here it's just an auto-resolve again, although in Empire you can never know whether an auto-resolve is going to be a disaster. I went for it, both sides lost about the same amount of troops, Pretty unfair, but then again it was a fort assault, so maybe that was taken into account. And now I'm actually going to get rid of many of my pop-up generals because they're pretty expensive to have around, and hopefully we don't need them all right here, although I will keep a garrison in case Spain comes for round 3 in the area. Now, unfortunately, we did lose our trade a couple of turns later. New Spain finally decided to blockade our ports. So as a result of that, we are no longer going to be rich. We have no money and no income. So we can't just wait around and build up our territories, which would have been nice. At least for what it's worth, I can still capture more trade nodes down here, although it is worth absolutely nothing, to be specific. In fact, it loses us money because you have to pay for the trade ships. Anyway, so we'll just wait a few turns and try and get ourselves back together before we come up with our next move.